The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Thursday. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. A new haircut for Elijah Herbel. Got his ears lowered. We'll get to our starting five. Shout-outs. Folks are elbowing their way in for the starting five shout-outs. We go over the five, of course, and appreciate so many of you checking us out. Hail Varsity YouTube can also stream on Twitter, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Give that a follow. Find Elijah on Twitter at Herbal Essence, Chris Schmidt at Schmidt_radio. Numbers to get in, 489-1240, 489-1240, 800-825-5865. Can email Chris at hailvarsity.com. I'm laughing because on Twitter/X, there's a few obscene screenshots of college football 2025 with mascots. I'm too excited after a touchdown. Oh man! So that's my stupid humor for the day. Happened to Ralphie. It happened to Smokey.
Hasn't happened to Herbie yet.
Thank God.
Is that a corn cob in your pocket? Are you excited to see?
Oh, brutal.
Oh, man.
Last commentary on the video game. Junior was back at it again today before work, and he's playing with his buddy Jace online, and he's screaming. And he was excited because I think he was able to get Quentin Ives up for the Heisman. He has flipped for Nebraska. He's now in year 3. And like his mother yelled down to the basement at him, watch your language because he's losing it. And just to paraphrase, GD it, the Gatula got called for holding again. And like, Gatula doesn't hold people, Carson.
No, it's because they do knuckles up with the block.
Yeah, right? I'd explained to him. He's like, get out of here, old man. You and your 1 foot. So, but he was just screaming. Every time I run the ball, we get a 60-yard touchdown called back for holds. We will preview a little further the offensive line. Dr. Rob Zatechka going to join us, Doc Talk podcast, him and Travis Justice. Dr. Rob, of course, part of the pipeline, Husker Hall of Famer, NFLer, and we'll check in with him. Some outlook, good perspective from Searles, of course. Yesterday, we'll talk with Rob Zatechka here in the 5 o'clock hour. Brandon Vogel with us from Counter Read as he'll kick off this first hour with us in about 15 minutes, counterread.com. And then Coach Barnett, what's real with this transition in the Big Ten? What's Coach Barney think of Oregon? 489-1240. I do have a question for you, and we'll get our starting five shout-outs in a moment. But what's the happy medium? What do you want schedule-wise? We talked a little bit about it because the SEC media days are winding down. Coach Elko is on the soapbox, and I like Elko. I think he's a hell of a good coach, and I think he'll do well at A&M. But he's talking about just how premier the SEC is, and they are. They're good. They're really good, but they're going to be lobbying for the 8-4 and at some point 7-5. I mean, it's good. There will be a day with the playoffs where they're going to ask for their 6th place team to get the nod over a 3rd place Big Ten team over a conference champion. I know there's rules in place, but the power brokers are the Big Ten and the SEC, and they're going to fight like hell to get at a minimum 5-5, and then you get your top-ranked group of 5 squad in, and if Notre Dame's worthy, there you go. But that strength of schedule is important, and they're still at an 8-game conference schedule. The SEC is. The Big Ten's at 9. Maybe they expand that. I pray that games against Colorado or future games against Tennessee for Nebraska don't go away. I want to see those. And you're already going to be set up if you're Nebraska because you got the Buffs this year. You get to go out to USC this year. You go to Ohio State this year. You have Wisconsin at home, which is good. You go to Iowa. And you have UCLA in Lincoln. Am I missing anybody else? There's no Michigan. There's no Penn State on the schedule. You've got your Illinois.
Hey, don't forget, you got to go to play at Indiana.
Well, but
what
that's
a venue that is.
Well, it's rare. It's what it is. I think it's happened once in 2016. But the last time Nebraska played in Indiana,
it was a fully clinched type of game.
It totally was. It was my buddy Brant's wedding. It's his birthday today. My old college roommate. But yeah, so guy in the wedding, me, had earpiece in. I stormed the bar, not because I was thirsty, but I wanted to see the fourth quarter. And Stanley Morgan made some plays. Brandon Riley made some plays. Nebraska held on, I think, 27-22. Chris Jones, big-time game.
I remember for some reason I was going to Hy-Vee during the second half of that game. I remember distinctly
getting tight,
pulling up I'm not sure if it was legal or not, a stream on my phone and watch, because I'm like listening on the radio. I'm like, oh man, this game's getting close, and just sitting in the Hy-Vee parking lot for like 30 minutes watching that game, sweating
it out,
clinched.
Sweating it out. Yeah. So yeah, maybe it's a good omen going to Indiana. So the schedule, while not as dire as say 2021, if you're Nebraska, still not easy. I mean, it's not Iowa manageable when you look at teams that you should be favored of. And I'm not knocking Iowa, but Iowa should find a path to 9 or 10 based on their schedule. They don't get as many heavy hitters. Nebraska goes to SC, goes to they go to Ohio State, they go to Iowa. Those are 3 brutal road games. But if you're Nebraska, you want to find a way to split with Wisconsin and Iowa at some point. You want to find a way to play competitively at Ohio State. And you want to find a way, maybe in good weather, November in L.A. with Elijah in attendance. We're saying that right now, and then you want to start out hot, obviously. So, what's the right stroke here if you're Nebraska football, and what do you do as a conference to set yourself up for success while still having 9 conference games, while still making your TV boys and girls happy? Because you're going to have Oregon and Ohio State. That's a regular season ball game. You're going to have the Texas-Michigan non-conference, but those may be a thing of the past. You want it challenging but not murder to give yourself at least a shot at 8, because I think you can make a playoff argument out of the Big Ten with 8 most years. If you get a win over a Michigan and Ohio State or an Oregon.
And not to totally derail this conversation, but I know we're getting to the Hail Varsity Radio starting 5 here in just a second. Speaking of imposing road environments, I was the week before Nebraska plays USC, which is, as you know, a Husker bye week. I was invited down to Athens, Georgia for the Georgia and Ole Miss game.
Do it.
Do it?
Instead of, it's a bye weekend?
It's a bye weekend.
Do you need a friend?
Maybe, if you want to come on down.
That'd be great.
Get a little crew down there.
So
but all I'm saying
reset this for me. So it's Athens. Athens hosting Ole Miss.
Yeah, I would have to wear Georgia colors most likely so I don't get murdered.
Whatever. We're gray. But can we find a bar
to do
the weekend edition from?
Well, here's what I'm trying to decide between road trip and flight.
Fly. Just go to Atlanta.
You would think, but it's a 15-hour road trip, which sounds brutal. But it's 10 hours to Nashville. Dare I say, 10 hours to Nashville, spend a night in Nashville, finish the trip up to Athens.
How about you just fly to Nashville and drive to Athens?
Well, then I have to get a rental car, and it's a whole thing.
No.
I don't know.
Fly.
But that's I feel like Georgia in November could be nice, and it would be a fun venue to go see. Plus Ole Miss, top 10, Georgia, top 10. Mm-hmm. Could be a fun game to go see as well. So I was invited down yesterday, and I'm working through the gears in my head whether or not it's going to work out, and I think I'm going to do it. But
that's big time. Let's get our starting 5. Broderick was in at 320. God love you, Broderick. Uncle Jimmy in batting second. Sal is in third. Justin, good to have you in at 4. Jeff checks in at 5. Brennan from the Black Hills, newly married Brennan is in. Brennan, good to have you back. The real Matthew is in. Tiger Shark Diver says, you guys are savages. I just checked in thinking I was number one at 3:30. Ha! As always, GBR. Elijah is Taylor Lewan's little brother. Says crazy spider adventures.
Is there a resemblance?
I mean, the haircut, the mustache.
He's a much scarier individual than I am.
Well, he's a little taller and a little thicker still, and
stronger.
There's lots of tattoos rampant all over him, which is fine. Elijah's a good kid, just has to learn how to drive a manual transmission.
You think I don't know how to drive a stick?
I think, you probably learned on the old dad's construction stuff.
No,
right?
no, I learned on an old Volkswagen Beetle.
Did you?
Yeah.
Hippie.
Yellow.
NASCAR Eric is in. Good to have you, NASCAR Eric. Larry is in. Larry says, and this was about an hour ago, when I get the notification 15 people are already in, I won't live long enough to ever be in the top 5. But we're going to shout you out anyway, Larry. Anyway, hello to all from Lake Okoboji. Moonbot, howdy nerds. Patrick here, Michael here. Good to have you. KG is in. KG, good to check in with you as always. And we'll say hi to Cliff as well. Cliff from Florida. So there we have it. We'll get more of your comments. Mr. Brian Snitley is in, and he is already into the recruiting thoughts. That's where we're going next. And you have Coach Pot Roast and Coach Tony White with some Twitter graphics from last night, and that could signal a big-time linebacker flip for Nebraska. That is the smoke. We're always wondering about Hawthorne. Hawthorne, is he the next to commit? Of course, it's between Nebraska and Iowa State. This is, from our information, could be pointing to more of a defensive line flavor, Elijah, as you have Kade Pietrzak out of West Fargo, North Dakota. Pietrzak is that force.
Pietrzak.
Thank you.
Fun name.
Pietrzak. Pietrzak is that 4-star defensive lineman, 6'5", 240, that has checked in on Nebraska. You've got many of the major analysts around the college football recruiting landscape that they are crystal balling or projecting him now to Nebraska. And he had been with Oklahoma. He had given his commitment to Oklahoma. Things have flipped. I don't know if it's an NIL thing or what, but if an announcement's pending with Kade Pietrzak and Nebraska, so just, I don't want to say desperate, but they want to add to that defensive line room. And if you get a defensive line 4-star kid, I love Midwest defensive linemen. I'll take kids from anywhere that want to play football for Nebraska if that's what they want to do. But a kid out of North Dakota or the Dakotas in general, you look at what Polar Bear's done. Obviously, South Dakota, don't confuse the two states. I am not. But Brett Qualley, a stud from Williston, North Dakota, just one of the last North Dakotans I remember coming to Lincoln. But anywho, if this comes to fruition for Nebraska, big-time pickup. There's no official announcement yet with Pietrzak. But, again, the major analysts with your 24/7s, your on-3s, are saying that looks to be the case, that he may have flipped from Oklahoma to Nebraska. Time will tell. Twitter will tell. But you had two major defensive coaches on Twitter last night putting out some sort of smoke signals for the rest of us.
And I'm not sure if he had ever officially publicly committed to Oklahoma. It felt like maybe a silent commit was going on there, where he was committed in his own mind but had not officially announced it anywhere just yet. But Pietrak's an interesting one. I don't necessarily think Nebraska has a guy on their roster like him, because he is...
Is he not comp at all with Ty or Nash?
No, Ty and Nash are classic, prototypical Big Ten defensive tackles in that they are size, weight, like... I don't think
they're anchors.
Yeah, they're anchors, where I'm not sure what you'd call this guy. My comp is maybe a Jared Crick, where he's got that a little bit of... There's explosiveness, that athleticism. He's going to get up and down the line of scrimmage and go make plays. Not just in the backfield. Yeah, it's like... a true athlete playing defensive tackle. I'm not saying Nash and Ty aren't.
Well, when we sit down with Ty next week, we'll just say that the guy back in studios. I'm joking.
You said you're not really an athlete.
Watch him shot put you out of Lucas Oil.
He's gonna shoot a double leg next time he sees me. But I just feel like he's a lot more of an athlete, hair on fire type defensive lineman that is going to be flying to the ball no matter where it is. That's kind of the feel you get from him. Real energetic, exciting football player. And again, I don't say any of this to take away from what Nash and Ty do. He just feels he is a different type of athlete.
Different body
inside.
type.
Different body type inside there, where, as you said, you had a great word. Those two guys are anchors. Mm-hmm. This guy is much more of an explosive athlete that can get sideline to sideline from the defensive tackle position, which is a little bit more rare. I really like the film I see from him. KG
says Nashville is overrated. So he is just trying to save you some money from the would-be bye-week Georgia Ole Miss trip. Eric asked the question, an old Beetle like Bundy? Ted Bundy?
Was Ted Bundy's Beetle yellow? Because this was an old 1971 yellow Beetle.
I don't know what color. I have not Googled what color was Ted Bundy's Beetle.
I killed that thing multiple times on A Street. Backed up traffic is bad.
No, really?
Yeah. But I learned eventually.
Ted was a bastard, putting it nicely. Brandon Vogel on the way with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We welcome in Brandon Vogel with Counter Read. CounterRead.com. Like and subscribe there. Good stuff each week with him and Aaron Sorensen. College football almost upon us. Media day is almost here. Vogues, how we doing? Thanks for a few minutes.
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
We're good. Elijah is contemplating an invite to Athens during Nebraska's bye week, the week before Ohio State, mid-October. And that'd be Georgia Ole Miss. If it were in the SIP, I don't know that Paul Finebaum would be invited by Lane Kiffin.
I think we're talking November 9th.
Oh, November 9th. Okay.
The second bye week.
Second bye week. Anywho, warm climates. You've been to Athens. But Elijah was lobbying for a trip to Nashville on this extended road trip versus flying. Our friends in the stream, are specifically KG, says Nashville is way overrated. Do you agree?
It's a complicated question. Have you been there before, Elijah?
I have not.
Okay. That tells me that it might be worth your first stop there. My wife and I went on our honeymoon to Nashville a long time ago now. And it was still pretty great there. I now live 2 hours away from Nashville, and I almost never go there. And I hate driving through the city. The traffic is enormous, always. Broadway has kind of become the main drag, which used to be full of like old traditional honky tonks. Now it's like Kid Rock and Jason Aldean and whoever else is down there, which is fine. It's just the city has changed a lot in the last 10 to 15 years. So that said, I think it's still worth experiencing. Counter proposal: if you just go a little further down the road 2 hours, I'll make you probably one of the best 5 steaks you'll ever have in your life if you want to stop in Chattanooga.
See, that's not a bad offer.
That's a win.
Because if I were to leave on a Thursday, I'd have to get somebody.
If I ride with, the deal's off.
For the steak?
Yeah, folks, like, I'll break it for you, Elijah. Schmidt, you go to hell.
Well, I'm thinking like Thursday night, and then Friday you get up, finish drive to Athens. I can even check in from Athens for the Friday show. We could do a show down there if you want to come with, Schmitty.
That's Carson's birthday. It's his 18th birthday. I might be in.
I mean, that'll be a truck from Lincoln to Chattanooga in one shot. But the nice thing would be that the next day, it would feel pretty easy. So, but yeah, there's nothing to contemplate here. Go to the Georgia Ole Miss game. Okay. We'll figure out the details of routing and planned stops later. See,
I'm no stranger to hellish road trips, but I'm not with potentially going to USC the next weekend. It could be back-to-back just hellish trips overall. I'm flying to USC. I think I've taken the road trip off the option or off the table there, but still a lot of travel in back-to-back weeks. Maybe I'll go back to flying, but I don't know. A road trip across the southern United States feels like a good time.
Be all right. Be all right. Vogues, I want to get into what is the right amount of carnage with your college football schedule. We opened up with this. How difficult does your schedule need to be in the Big Ten if you're Nebraska, or how do you not cannibalize your squads? You're going to have this arms race for spots in the college football playoff. SEC will be lobbying for 8-7 win teams someday, maybe this season, to get in over a 8-9, maybe 10 win football squad from the Big Ten. It shouldn't happen, but you never know. And you look at Nebraska's schedule this year, doable in comparison to specifically 2021. All that being said, you still want some helmet games on there. You got to win them.
Yeah, I think if you're a team that's, say, presumed to be in the top 12, Penn State might be an example. Like leaving Georgia, Ohio State, like the teams that are probably in the top 4 out of it. Like if you're a Penn State, and Ole Miss might be an example. I think you want a schedule where you look at it and say, oh, there's 3 pretty tough games on there. Because I think as we go forward, I'll be surprised if you're a 9-3 team in the Big Ten and the SEC at least. If you're not right there in the playoff discussion most years, given the size of those leagues, given the difficulty of like even the worst conference schedule in the Big Ten or SEC, if you go 9-3 with it, like you're going to have proven something. So I think that's about the kind of the middle point where you want to be between like, oh, like you have a schedule that's so tough. I mean, unless the college football playoff committee going forward really changes its behavior, and it might, but I think it would take multiple seasons. I don't think we're going to see a lot of teams that go 8-4, but you're like, oh, but they played the 5th hardest schedule in the country. That's obviously a playoff team. Even though that might be true, it's just we're trying to we're moving. It's kind of a cold cut from the entire history of college football to this point, where like your job was to avoid any loss for most of it. And in the 14 playoff era, maybe you could lose 1 or 2, depending on when it was, to an era where it's going to be much more like the NFL, where an 8-4 team could be completely deserving if it had a very difficult schedule. We're just not used to viewing teams that way in the college game at this point.
And obviously, Brandon, not quite knowing how the college football committee is going to weight things moving forward. Do you feel like the Big Ten is at a disadvantage considering it has a 9-game conference schedule compared to the SEC's 8? Because the SEC gets a diet bye week in the middle of their conference slate every single year whenever Alabama gets to schedule UT Chattanooga. No offense to Chattanooga, but
Samford.
You get what I'm saying. Samford, whatever directional school you want to put in there.
Yeah. I think initially it's a little bit of a disadvantage. If we do get to a point where, all of a sudden we see the committee is valuing a team who might be 8-4, but played a really, really tough schedule, then maybe not so much. Maybe then it actually becomes an advantage. But I think something will change before then. Either the SEC will go to 9 games, or maybe the Big Ten will see a couple of results from these first couple of playoffs and make a change itself. Because it's kind of been on the fence with the Big Ten from what's been reported of, yeah, you've got some proponents in the league who are like, let's go back to 8, playing 9 when the SEC isn't is tough. It gives half the teams in your league another loss, just by definition. So we'll see how sentiments change, because where we're going is it's going to be, and I don't like this, but it's going to be the SEC and the Big Ten, direct comparison between the two. Big 12 and ACC come after that.
Brandon Vogel's with us from Counterread, counterread.com. Vogel's also a part of the Common Fan podcast. And our friend Evan Bland, your last guest, the episode has dropped a couple days ago, Vogues, and you hone in on why Frosty didn't work without divulging all of it, because folks need to go check it out and listen. It's the old barroom question, man, that folks still pour one and something comes up, something triggers a memory, or there's a highlight on BTN of the Frost era. There's a key play or a moment in the fourth quarter. You guys have covered all of the coaching changes the last 2 decades. It's been every 4 or 5 years to do the math on all the coaches. And I know on deck is the Rule era and optimism, but what did you take away with this episode on the topic of Frost and why it didn't work out?
Yeah, so the Frost one was interesting because it's obviously the freshest. We just lived that one. But there are still moments where you're kind of like, oh yeah, I kind of like half forgotten about this piece of it or that piece of it. I mean, I think the big thing is, and this wasn't, I guess, anything new for me, but it kind of goes back. So that episode you mentioned, this Frost episode, kind of kicks off with talking about his introductory press conference, and there were kind of 2 key moments there in my mind, and Evan kind of pointed this out too. There was one where he was like very adamant about, hey, my family's off limits, which is a totally fine thing for a coach to say. It was just a bit strange.
Strong tone too. In
the first time that Nebraska media got to meet him in that setting, I guess would be more the point. And that was the moment that kind of told me, like, Nebraska fans are so excited for this, and Nebraska got the top candidate in that cycle because of his tie to Nebraska. Like, if it had been somebody else, probably not. But it told me, like, he was a little bit on guard. And then at the end of the day, like, the other quote that still stands out is, we hope the Big Ten will have to adjust to us. Hope is an important word in that statement. The Big Ten didn't have to adjust to Nebraska. And at the end of the day, I don't think when that didn't become the case, Nebraska did a very good job of adjusting itself for, like, here's what it takes to win in this league. It is different. I thought we'd come in. They'd have to figure us out, but instead we need to figure the Big Ten out. And that piece of it never happened. And that ultimately comes down to a little bit of pride, I think, and a little bit of hubris is kind of where I landed with a review of it.
It's Brandon Vogel with us here from Counter Read. And Brandon, here quickly, as you discuss this Frost, as you look back, was there any moments that now, looking back with the benefit of hindsight, where Husker fans and maybe the athletic department should have seen maybe this whole Frost experiment isn't going to work?
Oh, I mean, the shocking thing still is that after 2021, that team was legitimately, like, it's hard to say they were good because they went 3-9, and we've all, like, processed the best 3-9 team ever, but for a team to be that close so much, with the benefit of hindsight, it stands out to me that that was the moment. And Trev Alberts, fairly new AD at that point, still at Nebraska, basically laid it all out. Like he said, there's no empirical evidence that this is going to work, but Scott's a Husker, so this is what we're doing. Made sense. But I think in hindsight or in retrospect, when you look at that, like, that was maybe your chance to move. For you to be that close and basically get none of those games, I mean, like, sheer randomness, which is what you base this on, is like you're going to split those games, and they didn't.
Vogues, hang tight. We'll get some more time with you. Brandon Vogel with this Counter Read. Hail Varsity continues, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
A few more minutes. Brandon Vogel with us from Counter Read, counterread.com. Rob Zatechka, Dr. Rob, joining us next hour to talk O-Line. Gary Barnett has lived a few media days in his time, and Vogue's Indy is upon us, and buzz level is going to be what for Nebraska? You know that Oregon and Ohio State, and there's Michigan. I mean, you know the teams that are on that doorstep or have been to the playoff. Nebraska's not that discussion point, but hey, Matt Rule and Nebraska seem to get their fair share of pub, and there's some excitement nationally for sure going into year two.
Yeah, I think that'll be kind of the big storyline from next week. I think Nebraska's in a good spot entering the media days, and that they'll be maybe upper third of an 18-team Big Ten in terms of intrigue, but they're not going to be one of the leaders. I think all four of the new schools coming in, that'll be a big piece of it. Maybe USC more than anyone, or Oregon. Probably Oregon and then USC, just given that there's some, uncertain. Like I think Lincoln Riley has a little bit to prove at USC this year, and he's going into that would have been true anywhere, but he's doing it in a new league. So I would expect those teams to kind of lead the way. Ohio State, obviously, Michigan will be interesting with a new head coach there, and a lot of change. So Nebraska will get its questions. I think it'll get its questions about kind of the off-season buzz around the Huskers. But for the most part, they should be able to kind of quietly go about their business, which I think is, if you're a coach, certainly is what you want from a media days.
Brandon, a fun game that I like to play every single year. I think we did this last year with you, and I'll do it again here. The first question Matt Rule will face whenever he gets up to the big podium at Big Ten Media Days will be regarding what?
Quarterback.
Defensive back coach? The new members of the Big Ten? There's a lot of options this year.
Yeah, there are. So the first time he'll be at the podium will be like in front of the group. So it's I don't know. It's kind of like 50-50 whether it'll be a local reporter who has a question that they may generally want an answer to, or a national guy who's kind of taking a big picture approach. I'm betting it'll be about Dylan Raiola. I think it's either that. I think that's the favorite. Second choice would be just about kind of the offseason buzz around Nebraska. So those are my top two choices. But I would put my money on it might be Dylan Raiola related.
Vogues, your column today with Counter Reed focused in on Coach Butler, and you did a deep dive into his football credentials from the Bill O'Brien years to a decade in the NFL. What'd you find out?
Passing numbers are really good. Pass defense numbers, which I think is obviously what you'd hope from a secondary coach. And the NFL is not my area of expertise. I spend about 99% of my time on college football and maybe 1% on the NFL. But available net yards is a number I look at in college. It works just the same in the NFL. All of Butler's defense is -1. Minus 2017 when the Houston Texans had some injuries and kind of bottomed out. And then he went to Buffalo the following year. They were top 10 in that category, which is basically the equivalent to passer rating, but is a little bit more intuitive. So as far as the results against defending the pass, didn't see a whole lot not to like with Butler's NFL time. Those Penn State years were a little bit more up and down at a very volatile time at Penn State. So, I think my main takeaway was you don't set out to have to hire a coach in July. But with everything Nebraska has returning on defense, like they need a guy who can come in, like be buttoned up on the X's and O's piece of it. Those sorts of things. There are questions on the recruiting front, transfer portal, basically talent acquisition that will come later. But for 2024, which is basically here now in my mind with the arrival of conference media days, I think Nebraska did about as well as it could with the hire based on what he has put on his resume.
Vogues, what else coming up here? What are you and Aaron working on with Counter Reed?
Yep. So we'll be looking towards and reacting to conference media days, of course, next week. Aaron's also been working for a couple of months now on kind of an Olympics guide for Husker fans. It's going to be intriguing from that perspective because we do have some Huskers involved as far as the Olympics go, which also kick off at the end of next week. So that's kind of on the immediate radar. And then beyond that, football season is basically here in terms of fall camp starting up, and we'll be into the kind of the regular news cycle again. So pretty exciting time.
Has Junior been invited to the Big Red Barbecue July 27th on the recruiting front?
No, not yet. Not yet. He's a little bit early. The fact that he hasn't played football yet, I think, is the holdup for the coaching staff. I mean, they can see the athleticism. Like you see him toddling down the street in his Crocs, and he jumps off the page. But they want to see a little bit of game experience, I think.
Fair. That's fair.
Should I lift Junior's grounding with his language and overall demeanor and just his over-competitiveness and anger when he's getting worked at the new college football game? Or were you a swearer and control chucker back in your day?
Well, no, I wasn't much of a control chucker. I mean, this was the olden days of video games where, for the most part, you just played by yourself, particularly if you lived in a town of 800 people, and it wasn't like somebody could just walk to your house. So the new world of like totally online gaming might have made that different for me, but I kind of got grandfathered into just taking it as it came. But you know, in the olden days, I've heard this new game is tougher. I haven't played it yet. I heard there's a learning curve, which intrigues me. But you know, sports games in the old days, like you didn't turn on the game to lose, and very often you didn't.
Well put. At Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Vogues, we'll talk on Saturday. Appreciate you much.
Sounds good, guys. Have a good one.
There he is, Brandon Vogel with Counterread, counterread.com.
And one of the things I think you have to debate here with your son is the fact that whenever he is coaching, that's what he's doing. He's coaching in NCAA College Football 25. He's a different persona altogether. Like, isn't he even mad at Nick Saban for yelling and cussing a little bit when he's winning national championships? Absolutely not. I think that's what you had to say to juniors. If you win national championships, it's okay to yell and cuss a little bit. But if you're getting fired, then I mean, you might find a new career.
He got whacked. He's adopted Nebraska. He lost, I think, in year 2 because it started year 3. He lost Lloyd, Malachi, and Dylan to the NFL.
That's tough.
So
you're building from scratch. That's really what you're doing.
Yeah, pretty good.
I do think it is important to understand, though, that if that's his coaching style, that's just his coaching style.
Well, he kind of just grunts and occasionally says a few words to his mother and me, but it's a whole new side of him. It's the kid that got teed up in junior high playing basketball side. The dark side. We'll wind down this first hour. Rob Zatechka going to join us. We'll talk and preview the Husker offensive line. And Coach Barnett next hour, Hail Varsity. And we're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this first hour. It's Hail Varsity powered by Cornhead Lager. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Download the podcast, the audio edition. And like and subscribe. Give us the feedback, good, bad, or ugly. Love your comments. And also the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Like and subscribe there. Todd emails in, and apparently Ted Bundy's V-dub bug was light tan, not yellow.
I think I'm in the clear then.
You're clear. Yeah. The reason this came up is Elijah was asked if he knew how to drive a stick. And he's like, yeah, I learned on a Volkswagen Bug, early 70s model.
Yeah.
And somehow someone related Ted Bundy to driving a Volkswagen Bug.
See, that's what I learned on. That thing got sold years ago, too, by the way. I did spend a full week driving a right-hand drive stick shift in Africa on the wrong side of the road. So I think I got the stick shift down for the most part.
Kudos to you for driving on the European side of the road successfully.
I mean, most of the time we were off-road in that thing. It was a nice little Range Rover.
You were all right.
Land Rover, excuse me. But that was a fun trip. And driving right hand, drive with the
Then
stick in the
shift
left
with the
hand.
left.
It was confusing to get down, but I got it down.
Yeah.
So once you learn that, I think you're good to go.
We had our old buddy Ted in Ireland, thankfully, drive us around. Cranack and I can't drive anyway, let alone on the other side of the road in Ireland. Would have been a bit of a nightmare.
It's kind of like this new NCAA football game. Whenever you're doing a read option, the handoff button's been flipped, and it's just years and years of muscle memory that have gone out the window for me. Same thing, pretty much.
Memory is a thing that Lane Kiffin has and used today. On old Paul Finebaum, it was off the top rope.
Oh, yeah. When you got me fired at USC, I got myself fired at USC, but you didn't help.
It's a better story if I got you fired.
You really did. Because it is a true story that the athletic director and the president were on that trip. We were playing that night, and you were on College game day, and you had to make your big splash, and they were watching it, because I know the other person in the room that was watching it with them, and you said what a joke I was, and I'm the Miley Cyrus of college football coaching, and I should be fired, and they looked at each other, and later that night I was fired.
Yeah, by the way.
But hey, look what happened. I would have never gotten to work for Coach Saban. All these other things wouldn't happen, so I appreciate you for helping getting me fired. Thank you.
Look at what you're doing today. You're predicted to go to the playoffs. And look at Miley Cyrus. She's had a nice comeback.
So you're wrong on that. I mean, you put me down with that. So really, I don't really know what you're good at. Like you predicted that Coach Saban was done. That didn't happen. You basically said Miley Cyrus stinks, and she's still going.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's always great to be ridiculed by Lane Kiffin.
Just piled on him. And there's been a long line of coaches that wanted to do that. I remember that. USC got beat 10-7. Yeah, 10-7 game in the Pac-12 after dark by the Pirate Mike Leach and his, I think it was his Washington State squad that won 11 ball games. Because Pirate texted that night at 4 a.m. Yeah, we got Lane.
Didn't they literally leave him on the tarmac?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like not even figuratively, like literally left him on the tarmac.
Now, to Lane's credit, the story goes, he's like, come on. Can't do this here. You're upset. I'm upset. Totally tried to talk his way into keeping his job, which I get. But think about his career path. Wonder Boy, offensive play caller at SC under Pete, goes to the NFL, pisses off Al Davis, lands with Tennessee, then goes to SC, goes to rehab, Camp Saban rehab, kills it. He's been awesome ever since. Rob Zatechka's awesome next.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back with you, it's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. I just had our dear friend Sparky from down the hall rocking with the Blaze. He somehow acquired, so I'm showing folks in the stream, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Huey Lewis's golf hat. It's equivalent to Bear Bryant's houndtooth in the music world.
It looks well used.
It does. So we'll tell that story in a little bit. We have some football to talk. Dr. Rob Zatechka with us, Husker legend, Hall of Famer, part of the pipeline, host along with Travis Justice of the Doc Talk podcast, and got to check those fellas out on Sundays. Dr. Rob, it is awesome to see you. Thanks for you didn't chuck your computer like a Frisbee, did you?
I had to make the switch to the phone. I don't know what the problem was. I'd call my IT guy, except it's my home computer, so I'm the IT guy. So,
well, it's all good to have you. We always love catching up with you, talking some Big Red football. And what's your level of optimism? If Rob Zatechka's got a fairy nectar in front of him, how full is that beer, in the words of optimism, for Nebraska 2024?
Let's say guarded. I got like one of those big fat foam koozies.
Kind of like Ogre, the Ogre chalice.
Exactly. I'm kind of, historically, I've always tended to be fairly optimistic. I mean, you want to see those guys do well. I mean, we'll see what happens. I'm keeping it guarded in the sense that I think in my mind, if they make it to a bowl game this year, which you're looking at 6-7 wins is sort of the floor for making it to the bowl game. I think that's I think that's a great thing. That's awesome. You get that extra month of practice. That's that kind of that foundational build, one of those foundational building steps you want to have. I would love to see Nebraska knock off Colorado and Iowa and get 9 or 10 wins. I've got friends and a lot of pundits I know that are talking about, hey, we're going to be 7-0 heading into Ohio State, for instance. That kind of talk. And I'm just sitting there thinking, but you know what? This is a team that has not had a lot of success recently, and it takes a little bit from a psyche standpoint to be able to go into games, have a few setbacks, and be able to overcome those setbacks. And you've got to have that ability to get through a lot of these games. If you don't have that ability, you're going to pick up some losses here and there. And I don't know if Nebraska's shown they've got that overcoming setback type ability yet. Now, that doesn't mean a guy like Coach Rule's not working on it. That doesn't mean you don't have a coaching staff that's not teaching these guys, training these guys up, and building that confidence level. But these guys got to get in a situation where things start going badly for them, and they got to be able to overcome it on the field, and we just haven't seen that yet. So I always keep that optimism a little bit guarded where, you look at last year, they should have won 6 games last year. But, woulda, coulda, shoulda. You look at the last several years, there's a lot of games they should have won but haven't. And so until you actually see that proof, well, you don't know what's going to happen.
Rob, is flipping that mentality with Nebraska in close games, second half, we've seen it so many times, the meltdown moment or just the tightening up moment. Is it as simple as just doing it once? What is that process of trying to flip that mentality in your eyes?
It's got to become a consistent thing, and it's got to be something you've got to be able to do against halfway decent teams. You've seen some games over the last few years, Indiana, Rutgers, where you get some of these games where they're tight games, they're close games. Nebraska's had to kind of pull out a win or hold on for a win. You want to see that against Colorado, though. You want to see that against Iowa. You want to see that against a Wisconsin. You want to see that against Minnesota. Those are there's got to be a little bit of consistency there. You do it once or twice in a season, that's just not going to get it done. And you do it once or twice against a team that's in the bottom half of the Big Ten, that's not going to get it done. You've got to be able to do that against some of these better teams before I think that confidence really kind of starts building up.
Rob Zatechka is with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Dr. Rob, of course, the Doc Talk podcast. Rob Zatechka and Travis Justice. Be sure to check that out. Subscribe to it as well. We love pushing our pods and other pods. So I've got numbers from the offensive line last year, and I want the prescription here. 15 sacks, 63 hurries, 7 quarterback hits, 22 penalties. That seems excessive in some columns and really excessive in other columns. What's fair for an offensive line unit to have? What dictates a good offensive line when we talk just numbers? Sacks, hits, penalties. What does it need to be?
The overall sack number, that's giving up basically a little more than 1 per game. You're going to give up occasional sacks. I think a really, really good offensive line is going to give up 1 sack every other game, every couple of games for an exceptional offensive line. That's kind of a number that's going to be kind of hard to judge going into this year. And the reason I say that is the last few years, Nebraska's relied upon an Adrian Martinez, a Jeff Sims, somebody who they're not pro-style drop-back passers. They're guys who are going to kind of move around a little bit. Then they're taking off and running. Now, sometimes when you have that running quarterback, that sack number can get a little bit it can be a little misleading, because if you have a quarterback who's a fairly mobile quarterback and you get a low number of sacks, well, that might mean your quarterback got flushed out of the pocket and he took off running. Well, that means the offensive line didn't get the job done. We're also moving now from and now, by the way, when I say this doesn't mean that Raiola's not a mobile quarterback. When you go watch film of him over the last few years in high school, he's very mobile. He moves around a lot. What he doesn't do is he doesn't take off and head downfield. I mean, you got a guy who's averaged, it's like 208 yards rushing per season over his high school career. I don't have the exact number, but he runs for 150 to 250 yards in a high school season. He doesn't take off running. He's more of a pro style guy. He's going to sit back there. He's going to try and find receivers downfield. He's going to try and make a throw. He's not going to take off and run. And so those sack numbers could change drastically. And as this offensive line gets used to a guy like that, giving up a sack a game, which would be 12 to 15 sacks in a season, that number may not be a horrible number. If Nebraska's dropping back and they're slinging it 40 times a game, one sack isn't necessarily a bad thing if you're dropping back for 40 pass attempts. Now, I don't know if that's Rhule's plan with Raiola, but you've got a guy who's far more of a pro-style passing guy than what we've had in a long time. And it's been a while since Nebraska's had a guy who doesn't take off and run with the ball. So this is going to be a really, really new dynamic. So when you judge those numbers, it's going to be hard to come up with, okay, well, what constitutes good numbers now? But I mean, in general, if you're a good offensive line and you give up one sack every other game, that's pretty solid.
Dr. Rob Zatechka with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Dr. Rob, there's probably not a good answer to this question, but I'm going to put you on the spot anyway. Is there one offensive line statistic that you're going to be following this season that you think might be more telling than the other offensive line statistics, just in terms of this particular 2024 Husker offensive line?
Penalties. I mean, when you look at the problems that Nebraska's had over the last few years, I mean, it's become almost like a broken record. It's penalties, turnovers, special teams miscues. Now, they've kind of started to kind of polish those numbers up last year, but those are the things that have got to be fixed, and they've just absolutely haunted Nebraska. And I kind of sort of that. I mean, and the turnovers number plays into that as well, too. If you're getting good push up front, if you're getting good protection on pass blocking, those turnover numbers are going to drop. I mean, think of the number of times that last year Sims either got hit in the backfield and fumbled the ball, or took off running and fumbled, or got pressured and tried to force a throw and threw in an interception. Offensive line efficiency, that turnovers drop when you have a good offensive line, when you're getting good protection, when you're getting good push on run blocking, when you're protecting the quarterback and giving them a little bit of time. Turnover numbers drop. So that's probably the second one. But I mean, this is low-hanging fruit, but it's very real numbers that have haunted Nebraska over the last couple of years. And so when I look at Nebraska's offensive line, you'd love to be able to see kind of this really improved yards per carry. You'd love to see a big drop in sacks. You'd love to see an increase in pass efficiency numbers. Boy, we really got to start at just some of these foundational basics, like penalties and turnovers, because those have been the biggest detriment to Nebraska's win total over the last decade. We get better offensive line play, you're going to see fewer penalties. You're going to see fewer turnovers. And so those are the first two things I'm looking at.
Dr. Rob, what can balance do for the offense? They ran the quarterback out of necessity. It wasn't necessarily the offense they came in with, but think if you're getting 4 a carry on first down, you've got a capable thrower at quarterback. Your handoff run game is got to be the answer because you're not going to have the quarterback run element to it, but you're going to presumably have some playmakers split out. You have the tight end options. You have a stable of running backs that could be committee or someone could emerge. That translates to what for you when we talk about the offense being at least respectable with the run and the pass?
Well, and that's the thing. The run and the pass open each other up, and you've got to be able to do both. And that's something that was really – now, and when we talk run, by the way, we got to talk about it in the sense of a running back run game. Mm-hmm. When you're looking at Nebraska's leading rushers over the last several years, I mean, we've had guys that have popped up periodically and done some damage from the running back position. But when you think about the guys that have really, really put up the numbers, it's Adrian Martinez. It's Jeff Sims. There's a few games in there where Harburg went off on some long runs. You can't have the quarterback be the leading rusher on a team. You can't have the quarterback be the primary weapon when it comes to carrying the ball. And the offense becomes just tremendously one-dimensional when you do that. If it's Jeff Sims running the ball and throwing the ball, and you got one guy you've got to stop, and that's it. And if that's all you got to do as a defense, boy, that makes the defense's job easier. And so you've got to be able to that balance. I mean, it creates opportunities across the board. But the biggest thing here is that, again, kind of like what you touched on, that run game has to come from the running backs. We got to be able to get the blocking up front. It can't be broken pass plays where the quarterback takes off and gashes the defense. Mm-hmm. We've got to be able to find consistent run blocking up front by the offensive line, and we've got to free those running backs up to go do a little bit of damage on their own.
Dr. Rob Zatechka with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. Dr. Rob, about 90 seconds before we got to say goodbye. It's awesome to get caught up. We'll do it again. The one lineman you're circling this year, the 5 need to have chemistry. They've done time together. That's great. But who is your key cog for the O-line this year?
Okay, key cogs. This is kind of a tough one because it's like I'm thinking of 3 guys. Okay. So Ben Scott's got to be the anchor, and I really thought he was last year. I thought he was the most consistent guy Nebraska had last year, week in and week out. If he locks down that center spot with a lot of consistency, everything starts there. Number 2, I really, really want to see what Micah Mescua can do. You've got a guy that played for Rule, or at least was recruited by Rule, I know, at Baylor, transferred to Florida, was a starting lineman for the Gators. I really think he's a talented guy, and I would love to see him in a starting role. We'll see if that happens in terms of him picking up the system. But I think he's a guy that could really be a game changer for Nebraska up front. And then the final thing is just I want to see how Teddy Prohaska is progressing from all of the injuries that he's had to deal with over the last few years. If he comes back, he's getting a little mobility back, a little bit more of that bend in the knees and the hips, and he's feeling a little bit more comfortable at that left tackle spot. That could be a real game changer for Nebraska as well.
Dr. Rob Zatechka, be sure to check him and Travis Justice out, the Doc Talk Pod, and can subscribe to that and check them out Sundays and throughout the week. Dr. Rob, we'll give you a holler again. We'll tip that beer soon. Thank you much.
Absolutely. You guys have a great afternoon.
Appreciate him. That's Rob Zatechka, Husker legend, pipeline man. And we'll be back. Gary Barnett on the way with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. We welcome in the Hall of Fame coach, Gary Barnett. Football season's near, Coach. Got your vacation in down to South America. Is that where you took off to?
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica. How was it?
It was fabulous. What a great place. We just had a great time. Weather was great, and people are great. They're so ecologically conscious down there. It's just, it couldn't have been better. And language isn't an issue. The food was fabulous, and I didn't play golf, but we did about everything else, and just had a great time. Couldn't have been better.
You and I were talking. I was able to play golf 5 out of 7 days, despite a busted ankle. But I think, as good a golfer as you are, I think I would have done you proud before we got to the putting green, anyway.
Well, you got to putt. I'm watching the Open, and man, you got to putt over there to win those. You got a big putter, and putting's it. It's where it is. But yeah, I really liked Wild Horse when I played it, and I know you enjoyed it when you were there.
Did you get destroyed by the greens too, or were you fine?
I actually played really well there.
Okay,
and so putting is a strength for me. And the short game, I get lost in the length of the game anymore. But yeah, I just thought it was a great golf course, a great public golf course, and just a great layout. And it's one of those courses that you have that just fits your eye nicely, and that's what it did for me. So I was able to drive the ball pretty well on that golf course.
It was beautiful. It was fun, and got to do it again. Got to do another golf trip with my old buddy Jay Bird. Coach, Big Ten Media Days around the corner, SEC Media Days this week. The Big 12 had their Media Days with Coach Prime, and the Buffs the center of attention. Did you like Media Days? Did you tolerate Media Days?
Well, there were 2 different media days for me. The one in the Big Ten was, and I don't know that they do this anymore, but it was in Chicago, and we finalized it on the last day with a big luncheon, and every coach got up and talked. And so I worked all summer on my talk that I was going to give. Each coach just sort of tried to outdo each other up there, and so I worked hard on it, and it was the Big 12 media days were a little less. They weren't difficult. They weren't as much fun, and you did just sort of tolerate it because you get the same questions over and over and over. But no matter what, when I left each media day, I thought we might not win a game, and everybody we're going to play had a chance to win the national championship. So it was, you just walk out of there going, scared to death. You get back and you call your meetings and your coach just says, we got to get our butts to work, man, because everybody's going to be good this year. And so it just sort of launched you into the season and made you start looking at everything closely because it looked like it was going to be hard to win a game.
When you were at Northwestern and you're in Chicago, your hometown, with the Wildcats, what was your theme? Do you remember what you wanted to outdo the Barry Alvarez's, the Hayden Fries? I mean, what did you focus in on when you were talking about you and your program?
Well, it was different the first 3 years, or the first 4 years when we couldn't win a game. So then you're just trying to say we're legit. Here's what we're doing. Don't tell me how bad we've been. Don't tell me how bad the program's been. I won't hear that. I'm not going to tolerate that. And then after going to the Rose Bowl and the Citrus Bowl and winning it 2 years in a row, then it was a little different. And so you just had to go with the flow and whatever your situation was. Fighting for legitimacy with the media was a real challenge in the first 3 or 4 years. And then actually with Northwestern, nobody could believe you could do it again. So then you had to go fight for that and say you could and say why you could. So it was the speech at the end of the day was usually funny. And Paterno was always a riot. And several of the guys were always really good, but Paterno was a guy you sort of wanted to try to outdo.
What's your read from afar? And I know you've been on vacation, but Colorado made some headlines last week with Shedeur talking about where everyone's Super Bowl. Finebaum kind of jumped off the old top rope with a steel chair when talking about Colorado and their relevance compared to Coach Dion and his notoriety. What do you make of the buzz or the I guess, perception of Colorado heading into year two?
Well, no matter what, the fact that you are a part of the buzz is important. It's important to your fan base. It's important to your players as well, parents of your players. And so it's sort of like all publicity is good at this point in time. And then you got to go out and prove it. In Colorado's case, you look at their situation and they don't play SC, they don't play UCLA, they don't play Oregon, they don't play Washington, they don't play Texas, and they don't play Oklahoma. 6 great football programs that, depending on which conference you're in, you were going to have to play them. So they don't even have those on the schedule. But they've got 5 top 25 teams on their schedule this year. And I really think the schedule, and then you throw in North Dakota State, the opening game, Nebraska away, and CSU away, I think they've got a brutal schedule. And so they're getting a lot of attention, but they, out of the box, they've got to play North Dakota State, Nebraska, and Colorado State the first 3 games before they even get to the Utahs and the Oklahoma States and the Arizonas and Kansases and Kansas State. So they got a brutal schedule, and they're going to have to play really well. And I was with a group last night, and they said, "Well, if we win 8," I said, "I don't know what those 8 are going to be, guys, right now. I never know until I practice about 15 or 20 days in the practice day. I can pretty much tell you what it's going to look like, so I can't pick it. But I know if you have a quarterback and you have skilled players like we have, and you have to be. I mean, even if you don't do a thing, you're better in the offensive line than you were a year ago. You're going to have a chance. You're going to make things exciting, and I think that's where everybody is with Colorado.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Interested to get your thoughts on Oregon and the Big Ten. What do you expect from Oregon? You've seen them for years. Are they more Big Ten/SEC than your normal Pac-12 squads, or does it matter? Just what Oregon does it travel to about any conference?
Yeah, it travels. Oregon's the best team making a transition this year out of the Pac-12. Now, I think Texas is the best team making the transition to the SEC. But I think Oregon will end up being a second or third place team in the Big Ten. I really do. I think they're so hard to deal with defensively. They're hard to deal with, and everybody in the Big Ten is going to struggle with them. I don't care who you are, and they're good. Washington's going to have a tough time surviving this year, and then SC's got a good chance, and UCLA is just going to be UCLA, and so. 2 teams that have the best chance are USC and Oregon, but Oregon's got a chance to be right there at the end, either 1, 2, or 3.
What do you think about Nebraska? We know a lot about Coach Rule and how his builds go. Does it come down to turnovers and quarterback play for you?
That's exactly right. Turnovers and quarterback play. You got a freshman quarterback probably. You're going to play for the first time, and you can't just throw him to the wolves. You got to protect him a little bit. And turnovers, because that's been their problem. And they beat us last year if they don't turn the ball over 3 times in the first half. So that's what it is for them. If they can reduce the turnovers and get quarterback play, that is substantially better than what it was.
How difficult a schedule do you want versus what you need? And I ask that. You laid out the Buffs schedule. It's been highlighted with, Wisconsin's schedule, a lot of helmet games. When you look at the SEC and the Big Ten, fewer future non-conference games, which is too bad, but there's a lot of good ones this year. So what's the right amount for a football program? What's a right amount for a coach when it comes to a schedule?
You know, you can look at the schedule at the beginning of the year and sort of guess and think you can guess what that's going to be like, but you don't know till you go through the season. You don't know who's going to be all of a sudden have the great year they need to have. You don't know who's going to have the down year that you don't expect. You just can't tell, and that's why you always are just trying to get your kids to totally respect whoever they're playing, and sometimes people think you're trying to build up a team that you're about to play that isn't very good, or the fans don't think it's very good. But I'm telling you, when you're a coach, you realize you can win or lose absolutely any game. And the difference usually comes down to the amount of respect your team and coaches have for the team you're playing. And if they respect them, they'll prepare for them. And if they don't respect them, then they won't prepare appropriately for them. And so that's what it comes down to for me. I don't care who you're playing. I don't know what's enough or what isn't enough. You don't know that until the end of the year. You sat down at the end of the year and said, if we'd had a tougher schedule, we would have been playoff ready. Or if we had an easier schedule, we would have made the playoff. You don't know. So you just have to wait and see how things fall through the year. And that's why you just got to be steady, week in, week out, day in, day out. Sort of the same approach to everything and trying to build respect for your opponent.
Coach Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, we'll let you get back to the Open and some golf. Do want to ask your thoughts on Florida State, some thoughts from Commissioner Sankey on the Noles, some thoughts from others when it comes to the Big Ten and SEC, not real interested in Florida State. What's their future? ACC stay together, or could you see the Big 12 make a play for some teams that could bolster an already pretty good league?
Chris, that's all a crapshoot right now. But the only thing you do know is something's going to happen. Something's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. To me, I don't know why Clemson and South Carolina or Florida State don't just get absorbed into the SEC, have the Big Ten pick up North Carolina and Notre Dame and break it down to 2 big conferences and go at it. Eventually it's going to be like that anyway. We're just going to have to wade through all this stuff until we get to that point, which is probably a couple of years, I think, probably 3 years.
Coach, enjoy your week. We'll check in again soon. Always appreciate your time.
Great being with you, Chris. Thank you.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you. Get the podcast downloaded today. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, the platforms you can hear Hail Varsity Radio. Like, subscribe. Give us a review. We love the feedback. Hail Varsity YouTube can watch the show there. Like and subscribe, and Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. The show streaming on Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. Hope you're doing all right. Big thanks to Gary Barnett, talking media days in Nebraska. Dr. Rob Zatechka to get his thoughts on the Husker offensive line. We appreciate him kicking off Hour 2. Brandon Vogel from Counter Reed. So between Hour 1 and Hour 2, dear friend Sparky, legendary rock DJ, came in, said what's up, and Sparks got the coolest gray Harley out in the parking lot. It's so awesome, and I'm such a chicken bleep. I wouldn't last on a motorcycle. Sparky's rocked the Harleys for a lot of years. So he walks in, says, dude, I know you golf. I was like, would you like to go? He's like, no. But I got this for you. And if you're on the stream, Hail Varsity YouTube, I'm holding it up. We kicked off the interview kind of teasing it, but it's a faded, red, fitted Titleist hat. It almost looks pink, kind of salmon pink. I haven't tried it on yet. My head's tiny. Anywho, so legend has it, Sparks' bro, not literal brother, but bro, would manage concerts and shows. And once upon a time, and I don't know if this is mid-'80s DeLorean sport album for those of you that are familiar with Huey Lewis in the news. This is Huey Lewis's golf hat. I've got in my hand. I wish I had some way to reach out to Huey and say, dude, got your golf hat. He just turned, I think, 74 or 75. He rocks the...
How do you know that off the top of your head?
Because it was in the news. It was on Twitter. He still rocks the just phenomenal stubble, not a beard, but just the stubble. And big Back to the Future fan.
That's where I was going to go.
Great. And then American Psycho is one of the albums featured in that show. Patrick Bateman doing the commentary and album review before he hatchets somebody. But yeah, big Huey Lewis guy. I mean, I don't have any of them in my phone, but whenever I hear it, I'll listen, turn it up. Do you have any? I now have something famous. I mean, I've got autographs.
I don't have anything really.
But I don't have a hat.
Just say shout out to Sparky because
Sparky's awesome.
Him giving you that hat, that's the power of love right there.
That is, bro. Show title.
Got him.
Pretty good.
Do I have anything faint? No. I don't know.
If you could, would you be the guy to buy game-worn jersey? Like that type of memorabilia. Beyond the signed hat, baseball, football, signed jersey.
I think some of those things are cool.
They're really cool. It's not what we're selling your kidney for, though.
I'm more like a history kind of guy. I like having this is like some important historical figure. Like he held this. That's kind of cool to me. But I don't quite get the markup that you get just because a famous person had this in their possession. Like the hat's cool. That's a gift. That's awesome. But
yeah, I mean, it's got sweat stains on the bill.
Like I went to this was years and years ago now. Went out to the Smithsonian Museum of American History, and it's like, oh, that's George Washington's original uniform from the American Revolution. That's cool to see the uniform that he wore and be like, I'm bigger than George Washington. Like I could never fit in that thing. Like I could probably beat George Washington in a fist fight.
Teeth were made out of wood, weren't they?
Wood and ivory.
Yeah.
Well, he also used some teeth from slaves, which is
that's
forgotten part
disgusting.
of history that is not right and gross. But I digress. That was cool to see. It's cool to see some of those things. But sports, do I want to pay hundreds of extra dollars for a jersey just because it was game worn? Depends on the game. But then you got to pay extra if it's a good game. I much prefer having those things in a museum where I can go look at it and be like, that's cool. Like if I owned it personally, what would I do with it? Look at it. That's cool.
We are getting blowback on what time the weekend edition will start. It's a special time. We are broadcasting live at Woodland Hills, Tyson's Treasure Chest annual golf outing with Searles and the crew to help fundraise and fight pediatric brain cancer, Stephen and Broderick. So a 7:30 sharp start time this Saturday. I'll be on the road. And good folks, great folks, amazing time with Tyson's Treasure Chest. Didn't get there last year, but I think we've been out there several years in a row. That's not a pat on our back. We just really appreciate all the folks that fundraise and support and give back. So 7:30 hard start. I guarantee it.
And while you're out there, you got to go say hi to my guy Todd with Woodland Hills. Great bowler in my bowling league.
Yeah, Todd's good stuff, man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Fantastic bowler. He came back from shoulder surgery, and I was wondering, is the bowling game still going to be there? The bowling game was still there. He still kicks my ass regularly. So shout out to Todd.
Well, and when we talk about gaining famous clothing, Huey Lewis's hat, I'm going back. There's this urban legend, and my brother-in-law, Uncle Andy, I think either a family member of his or somebody he knows, Bama played in Lincoln, I think in 78.
The hat.
The hat, the houndstooth hat that Bear Bryant always wore. Well, such a mad rush on the field. Nebraska beat number 1 Alabama. They're number 4 in the country. And someone reached over around the state patrolman and got Bear Bryant's houndstooth hat. That is allegedly supposed to still be in someone's possession in Lincoln. Then you have, of course, Fox Bryant's plaid sport coat hanging on the 6th floor. Fox Bryant was the best, man, and him and Keith Jackson always have a good time. So that's on full display.
I don't want to be canceled for this. Did Scott Frost ever get those Jordans back that were stolen from his house? Or
you're not going to get canceled. That's a fair question.
Does somebody in Lincoln just have Scott Frost Oregon Jordans sitting around?
I don't know. I mean, those were.
I think it'd be a crime for me to say, hey, if somebody has those, I'd be willing to purchase them.
Yeah,
that's the crime. That's where I was going to go.
That would be
get
purchasing
issues.
fenced material. I think I hope Frosty got his special Uncle Phil Oregon Air Jordans back.
I'm wondering though, did he ever get those back, or does somebody in Lincoln just have those?
I don't know. You can't really wear them because you'd be the only dude in Lincoln wearing Oregon
Special
Jordans.
edition Jordans.
Those were they the lime green? Were they the darker green?
I thought they were white with like green and yellow accents.
Okay.
Not that I would know.
And gee, Elijah, you're moving rather swiftly with the Cornhusker State games down in the post. Are those AJs you're rocking? I didn't know you were a Duck fan. What Jordan era are they? Are they the Jordan 3s, the 4s, the 5s, the 11s, the 1s?
Let's fire up the old Google machine.
All right. Elijah's looking for stolen material. You really don't like your Jokic's? You were hopping around the hallways last night when the show was over, trying to work on the vertical jump. 5
different pairs of shoes that were stolen. Some of the memorabilia was found, but some of it is still at large. All 14 rings that were taken were later found.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I don't know.
I believe the shoes are still missing.
If you get an email, tell us.
One person was already arrested for this, by the way.
Yeah, that's good.
Some of the shoes were not recovered.
We'll wind down hour 2 next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Hail Varsity YouTube, Hail Varsity Twitter, Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Reminder to get buckled up. Driving is a full-time job. Phones, food, and friends need your attention when you're not driving. Stop the distractions. Just drive. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. So, team practice tonight, or are you guys just going to wing it on Saturday?
Oh, we're winging it on Saturday.
All right.
As you know, it's going to be a late night here at the radio station for me. I have some plums in the fridge that I'm really looking forward to eating as a little snack here after the show. Should be good.
Not laughing. Mama brought plums at the grocery store, and they always look better than they taste.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I got some good plums.
Did you inject them? Did you inject them with any vodka, or is that just watermelon?
No, you can do that with watermelon. I've never tried that. I was hoping for peaches, but I went to the store and the peaches were rock hard, man. Like, it's a good time of year for peaches, but whatever peaches they had at the store.
Colorado.
Yeah,
peaches.
Colorado peaches are the best. Better than Georgia peaches. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. But the peaches just weren't great at the store, and I was looking at the plums, and the plums look solid. I'm usually not a big plum guy, but the price wasn't too bad. Got myself 3 plums in the fridge, so that's going to be my little post-work snack here before I finally make it home for actual dinner.
Cliff says 7:56. That is his time hack for Saturday.
They're all way over. This is Price is Right. They're all done for.
They're done. They're all. Justin says 7:34.
That's the first good guess we've had.
I can be there. I can screenshot when I show up. It's just a connection thing.
It's a connection thing. It's a Mark Cranack thing.
Well,
we had to throw the one guy here who's not here under the bus.
I did not say that at all. It's show and go, right? So we're excited, man. Tonight we're going to get back on the old Average Joe Sports Show horse and get ready to rock and roll a pod that'll probably drop tomorrow.
Yeah, probably tomorrow morning, so you can look at that. We'll see how much time I have tonight with NCAA football, my Road to Glory character. Need to put some real work in with Frodo Baggins tonight, so it's nice. It's for the first time all week. I don't have any morning radio coming tomorrow, so I think I can. Well, I'm going to stay up the exact same amount of time anyway, but I won't feel as bad doing it tonight. And I won't feel as bad in the morning, so I'm looking forward to that as well. So I think the Average Joe show comes first, but I don't know, man. I don't know. I need to get Frodo Baggins to his sophomore season before tomorrow rolls around.
Big day tomorrow. X-rays 9:30.
Ooh, could you get the boot off potentially?
I'm hoping. Doesn't feel like I can get the boot off.
What if you show up and it turns out it was a lot worse than we thought? Yeah.
Can I get some pain pills in the needle so I don't have to get rubber glove treatment through the airport here multiple times.
You're probably going to show up and they're going to be like, you went golfing?
I got it cleared. I said, I'm golfing. They say, take the cart. I was like, yeah.
Just imagine that conversation. If like, what the hell, man?
Well, I just don't know if my foot's busted. So
I'll hope the best for you.
Yeah, it'll be all right. We'll just do one of the Mr. Miyagi. I got to golf this weekend.
You don't have to.
Yeah, I do. There we go. Mr. Snitley, good to have you as he checks in to also pile on the potential tardiness Saturday. We're back tomorrow at 4. Pride of Fairbury, Bill Dolman, Clausburn, Jacob Badilla. Talk to you then with Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.